Okay, good afternoon. Again, my name is Captain Barry O'Shea, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing this member of the greatest generation here. Major Henry Duke Boswell, if you read the bio, is from North Carolina, and as a 16-year-old, joined the National Guard by lying about his age. This is before Pearl Harbor, and most folks in that generation had never left their home county until the war broke out. So he joined the paratroops, joined the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, doubled his pay by joining the Airborne Forces, which was a brand new concept in 1940, 41, 42. Shipped over to North Africa, came into Morocco to prepare for a jump into Sicily, the first airborne operation that the United States Army had ever done. General Patton's forces landed on the beach at Sicily after Duke's paratroopers had preserved the beachhead and handled the crossroads and the key communication points, the bridges. Then he liberated a second jump into Salerno, Italy, to liberate the city of Naples on the continent of Europe. Then they sailed through the Straits of Gibraltar to Northern Ireland to prepare for what many have called 24 hours that saved the world. Time magazine, 10 years ago for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, called it 24 hours that saved the world. And if you've ever heard the phrase the greatest generation, it came from Tom Brokaw. He was covering President Ronald Reagan in 1984, on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, when President Reagan spoke at the Omaha Beach Cemetery and Point du Hoc, where the Rangers scaled the cliffs. Duke's unit, the paratroopers, if anybody's seen the movie The Longest Day, the parachute lands on the church steeple. That's Duke's unit. They liberated the first town in France. It's called St. Mary-Église, and that parachute is still there today. They keep a dummy parachute attached to it. John Wayne played a battalion commander that was in the same unit as Duke. Broke his ankle. After liberating St. Mary-Église at 4 a.m., the boats came ashore on the beach at 6:37 a.m., but the paratroopers went in. The D-Day operation was 175,000 soldiers, 10,000 aircraft, 5,300 ships, and 20,000 paratroopers. 14,000 from the Americans, the 82nd Airborne Division of Dukes, and the 101st Airborne Division that you may remember from the documentary called Band of Brothers. Then there was also a British Airborne Division. After that, Duke jumped into Holland to try to liberate the movie A Bridge Too Far, Holland. The battle was stuck. Then they went into Belgium for the Battle of the Bulge, as General Eisenhower had 2 reserve divisions, and Duke's was one of them. They went into Germany, they met the Russians across the Rhine River, stopped the Russians from going into Denmark, and liberated a concentration camp. So for today's talk, we've got about 25 minutes. I thought if Duke told his stories of the D-Day invasion, because normally we speak for an hour or two, and we just don't have that time today. He's got some funny stories, but I'll try to help him with that. Ladies and gentlemen, a member of the greatest generation, Major Henry Duke Boswell. Thank you.
Thank you. I could say I'm glad to be here. In fact, at my age, I'm glad to be anywhere. So I'm happy to be here. And I do love to share my story. As Barry said, I went in the Army at 16, lied about my age, went through the processes he's told about. I'm just going to pick some of the things that made an impression on me that I'll tell you about. When we jumped into Sicily, we jumped in at midnight, and pilots were a little confused. Instead of hitting a 10-mile area, we were scattered over 50 miles. In fact, the German general thought that we had 2 or 3 divisions and started trying to maneuver his troops to meet us. Anyway, we fought that day, and the next night our 2nd Regiment came in to reinforce us. Well, they came in over the bay where the ships were that were landing the troops. Hundreds and hundreds of C-47s, about 20 men each in each one of them, flying at 500 feet and about 100 miles an hour, which is as slow as they could go. When they came over the fleet, which had been unloading the troops, some gunner did not get the word and opened up on us, thought that they were German troops. When he did, the entire Navy opened up and started firing on our troops. They shot down 28 airplanes, about 300 men that we lost. And you can't, the word friendly fire is just not, it's an oxymoron. There's nothing friendly about it. We lost one general in that shot down. But we fought through it and we continued going. We moved into Italy. We didn't have too much action there. We were attached to the British, and we were eating British rations, which were not as good as ours, but ours were the best. In fact, we were eating sea rations at that time, which came in a can. We took the city, chased the Germans out. About a week later, they had opened the post office and had American and Italian troops in there. And there was this tremendous explosion. The Germans had left one room in the basement of the post office filled with explosives, a time bomb. And about a week later, it went off and killed hundreds of our troops and American and Italian also. I was probably 4 blocks away and felt the explosion when it went off. From there, we moved around to Ireland. One of my members there was a USO show, and I went to an opera house, and I was really up in the nosebleed section. And they had different entertainers, but then this old fella, and he was old to me at the time, came on and sang White Christmas. I forgot his name. Irving Berlin, who wrote White Christmas. And he sang the song, and that brought tears to everyone's eyes, I'll tell you. The soldiers and everyone else were. And that was one of my great members from Ireland. We moved on down into England and really started training. If we were out in a field and had to dig a foxhole, when we got ready to leave, we had to cover it up because those fields were used for the cattle also, and didn't want them to break a leg. So we never did that in combat. I never feel one either. Left it for the next person. We trained hard, and on June almost about June the 1st, we moved to the airport. We were sealed in. On June the 5th, we were ready to go, and the weather changed so drastically, they postponed it one day. And so actually, this was the 4th, on the 10th of June, we took off and had to circle for a couple of hours to get all the planes hundreds of them in formation. And finally we did and moved out over the channel. And I could see out the window and the door of the plane. As far as I could see, left or right, there were boats, ships, I think even some canoes or I don't know what else, moving troops. They were all heading toward the coast. And I thought, boy, we must win with all this support. We flew over the front line, of course, and they were firing at us. But we managed to get to the airfield. We were one of the few units that landed on our exact drop zone. There we jumped. They were firing at us from the ground. So some of us were engaged as soon as we landed. Unfortunately, the town that we jumped in, St. Mary Glees, a barn was burning, and the Germans had allowed the French to set up a bucket brigade to help put the fire out. And so the Germans were up to watch the Frenchmen see they didn't do anything else, which was unfortunate for us. A few of our troops landed right in this exact area, right in front of the fire and in front of the Germans. As soon as they hit the ground, they were shot. They never even got out of their chutes. Some of our men landed in trees, and they were shot hanging in the trees before they could get out. But eventually moved up to that area. We took the area, and the first thing we did was to get our people out of those trees. I can still see that scene now. One of our men, unfortunately, his parachute hung on the steeple of the big cathedral with him in it. And he was hanging outside the window in which the Germans were firing machine guns down at us. He tried not to move, but they saw him move and pulled him in and took him prisoner. And then when we attacked the church and they retreated, he got away from them and got back to us. And now, if you go there now, they have a parachute and a full-size mannequin hanging on the church. On D-Day, that's a big celebration. For at least for a week surrounding it, there's all kinds of activities going on. We even send our American troops, send troopers over, usually 500 to 600, who make a jump on that day on the same field that we jumped on many years ago. We jumped at midnight. There was fire coming up at us, but not, well, they couldn't aim directly. They knew we were up there, so they were sort of just moving their guns back and forth. And every 10th bullet is a tracer, which has a coating on it that when it burns, you can see it. And so we could see a line of tracers coming up at us, and it seemed to be moving slow. You hear it pop when it went by you. You were trying to dodge it a little bit. You didn't prove successful. I had holes in my chute, but it didn't hit me, of course. We got our troops together, moved on into the town of St. Mary Glees. And there, as I said, the first thing was to recover our dead. But we fought there all night and all the next day. At 4 o'clock in the morning, we raised the American flag over St. Mary Glees, the same one that we had raised over Naples, Italy, a year before. It's still in the town hall there now on display, the flag. Our commander donated it to them.
It has 48 stars.
It did. It still does. He interrupted me.
talk about when their troops landed and what up for you and
Yeah,
give their address?
right. So finally, the troops that had landed on the beach, it took them 2 days to get up to us. And we thought we'd done such a good job, we'd probably be sent back. But instead, they thought we'd done such a good job, they put us in front. And so we moved ahead with the other troops. And we fought for 30 days, continuously moving forward. At that time, we were relieved, taken back down to the beach, and taken back to England to get ready for the next jump. But when we jumped and landed, you can jump 10,000 troops, and when you hit the ground, you're all by yourself. You don't land on top of anyone. And so we had to have a method of identifying someone else as to whether he was friend or foe. And in Sicily, we had used a challenge and reply. There, the challenge was George. The reply was Marshall. George Marshall was a general and was chief of staff of the army. I remember vividly, all by myself, saw someone moving, held my rifle ready, and yelled out, "George!" In about 10 seconds, back came the answer. Washington. I forgot that guy's name. So I knew he had to be an American. Then in Sicily, we had changed, in Normandy, they changed the procedure. They gave each one of the airborne forces a cricket. Louder. Okay. Anyway, the thing to do when you landed and were ready to start moving out, and if you saw someone near you or anywhere you wanted to identify, you were to click one time. And he was supposed to come back and click 2 times. If you didn't hear it, wait about 3 seconds, shoot him. You didn't want him to shoot you. And at the same time, you didn't want to shoot your own troops. So it was kind of dicey. From there, we went back to England. Again, we lost about 50% of our people. And this was sort of normal for us almost. General Eisenhower had been told that we would lose 75%, which he felt was an acceptable risk if we could pull off what we were supposed to be doing. But anyway, we pulled back to England, got ready all over again, replaced troops, weapons, equipment. And in September, we jumped into Holland. And we jumped 60, 70 miles behind the enemy lines this time. But main difference, this was a Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock jump. Before there had been 2 at midnight. It was Sunday afternoon. People were coming out of church, and they were really surprised when we showed up over the horizon and started dropping troops. The Germans that were on the ground offered a little resistance at that time and retreated into Germany, which was right across the fields. So we had a very good jump. Got assembled, got into our positions. The next day, the Germans came back with vengeance and attacked, and we were supposed to hold the bridge, which we did.
Okay, we're going to continue. Duke's going to move from Holland. Now he's back in the French Champagne region, R&R, getting ready for Christmas. And all of a sudden, the Germans break through in the Ardennes forest of Belgium. The Battle of the Bulge has started.
We were back in France, trying to get, we still had summer uniforms. And we got word that the Germans had broken through our lines in force, and for us to get ready to go as quick as we could. Well, within 18 hours, we had gotten our equipment. We were ready. We packed on the trucks, and they bussed us up to it. We went up into Belgium, unloaded, went right into the fight, and we fought there for about 30 days. One episode that we were holding this bridge and the Germans were attacking us, finally we got word that we had to hold it. So at the last minute, the Germans attacked, and when they got tanks on the bridge, we managed to blow it, and we stopped the attack. And we had a big fight for quite a while. We were in that area for about 30 days. We were pulled back at one time. And for 30 days, our troops, some of us, were living in foxholes, in the snow, knee, waist deep, minus 30. We couldn't build fires because if the Germans saw smoke, we were bombed. That was absolutely the coldest that I have ever been in my life. We lost more people to French foot and frozen feet than we did to the enemy. Your feet would just turn black, and if you didn't get treated, your toes would come off. And in our foxhole that we had to break branches and put in the bottom because some of the snow melted and there was usually water there. And at one time my feet were black and I thought, oh, I've got to go to the hospital. But we went on a short march, about 10 miles, I think, move position. And that did it, man. The blood was running and flowing then.
I'll let Duke have a little water break here. Duke and I went back for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, and we visited this town in Belgium that after 30 days, the troops were able to spend the night in the citizens' homes, and he got up and thanked him and said, this is the best place I've ever stayed because after 30 days in the snow, in the coldest winter of Europe in 50 years, they were able to spend the night under a roof. So it was really neat to be welcomed to Belgium. We've got about 5 minutes, Duke, so why don't you tell the Russian story? It'll be a good wrap-up.
Okay, jumping ahead. After that, we were pulled back out, made an assault crossing over the Rhine River. We were told to go as far and as fast as we could and meet the Russians. That wherever we met them, that's where the border would be. And we did. I think each Russian soldier had a bottle of vodka, which they were happy to share with us. And so we had a happy 2 or 3 days. There wasn't any problems with us. And outside the town, we discovered a small concentration camp. Small in numbers. There were hundreds and hundreds of bodies. Well, in that one, they didn't have ovens. They just brought them in there and starved them to death. And there were bodies laying in the street of this concentration camp buildings. They didn't have furnaces. There were boxcars sitting there loaded with bodies, stacked one on top of the other, and I guess they were going to ship out somewhere. I don't know where. But our commander made the Germans in that town of Ludwigslust, big, beautiful castle, go out, take each one of those bodies, wrap it in a sheet, bring it into town to the town park, which was right in front of this big, beautiful castle. He made them dig graves right there and laid each body beside a grave. Then he made every adult in that town walk by and look at the bodies. And if they turned their heads, there'd be a soldier standing there to turn it back. So they couldn't say that they didn't see it. They claimed, of course, we knew nothing about it. Well, I'm sure if they did, there was nothing they could do. If they had tried to do something, they'd have been killed themselves. It said we had met the Russians there, and our general decided to have a parachute jump put on for the benefit of the Russians. So they picked about 12 guys to go up. They went up and jumped, and they started to descend, and all the chutes opened except one. And this guy's falling. Then it appeared that his chute came out, but rolled up into what we call the cigarette roll. It didn't open. And he's still falling. Then it appeared that he fell out of the chute, and the chute is up here, and he's falling down here. And we're all watching him. Oh man, he's gone. He's bought the farm. He's had it. And about 150 feet off the ground, which is the barest minimum, he opened his parachute, landed okay. The Russian general ran out on the field, kissed him on both cheeks, took one of his medals and pinned it on him. And I happened to be watching. I was in one of the, we had us lined up watching. Well, we found out later that he was actually a stunt jumper, had been before the war. And so he had a bed sheet in his jacket. And so he didn't open his chute, but he pulled that bed sheet from the ground. It looked like a chute. Then he let it go, and he's falling with nothing. And then he popped his chute open. I think if the general had promoted him or whatever he did, he'd have been demoted, I know.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up and stay on time here. How many veterans are in the room? Please stand if you were in the military. Again, let's thank these veterans. If you were a veteran of World War II, please remain standing. I see one, I see two. Keep standing, please. Oh, we got a third over there. What unit were you in, sir?
194th Bomb Group.
So, Army Air Corps?
Yes, Army Air Force.
Got it. And how old are you now?
91.
Outstanding. Next to you. Yes, sir. You were in the Navy. I can see your blue hat.
I had my hairnet on. I can't find it.
How old are you now, sir?
How old was I?
Now. How old are you now?
I was overseas 4 years.
Okay. And you were in the Navy in World War II? Thank you. And then, sir, which unit?
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. And how old are you?
88.
Good. This gentleman in the white, come on up here, sir. Thank you.
Are there any Marines here?
No Marines here, no.
You got somebody else over there.
I want to cross up with the Marines.
U.S. Navy, thank you for your service, sir. Duke would like to make a presentation to this gentleman here. What's your name?
Carl Chrysler.
Meet Major Henry Duke Boswell.
I'm 91.
Duke's going to present him with the cricket that he showed from the D-Day landing in Normandy.
Present him with the cricket, the copy that we used for signaling, as I told you.
Duke, before you sit down, there's been a call from the audience for a quick review of the medals that Duke has on his chest. So we'll start on the left side. I don't know if everybody can see, but he's got 3 raids, 2 fourragères, one from the country of France for liberating France, one from the country of Belgium, presented by the King of Belgium, and then the orange is the color of Holland, the Netherlands. That's the lanyard for liberating the country of Holland. So his unit, the 82nd Airborne, are eligible to wear those if they were part of the liberating team. On his chest, well, let's start up here. The cross rifle symbolizes that he was in the infantry as an officer. Up here is his regimental crest. The 505 Parachute Infantry Regiment has a Black Panther. Their symbol or their motto is, what's the motto?
Ready.
Ready or H minus. Because when you jump on D-Day, H minus means you're jumping before the troops hit the beach. Minus 10 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is. Here is the Combat Infantry Badge in blue. You cannot earn that badge unless you were in combat in an infantry unit. And if you have a star above it, it means you were in 2 world wars. World War II and Korea. Some people will have 2 stars because they were also in Vietnam. Duke was injured in Korea and we haven't even gotten to that. His airborne wings are the basic wings like mine. You get these with 5 jumps at Fort Benning or Fort Bragg. But if you have a star and then a wreath, you are a senior parachutist and then a master parachutist. Senior is at 35 jumps, master at 65 jumps, and you need to be able to be a jump master, sticking your head out of the plane to find the drop zone for everybody on your stick. Below the jump wings are the 4 bronze stars symbolizing the 4 combat jumps in World War II. And we think Duke is one of only certainly one, and maybe 2 in the state of Colorado that is still alive and has 4 combat jumps in World War II as a parachute. Duke also wears not the air assault wings for helicopter landings because they weren't there in World War II, but he has what were called the glider wings. Airborne troops also had to be glider qualified, and the glider troops, if you read anything about Normandy, hit a lot of hedgerows, and they actually took more casualties, and they didn't get the airborne jump pay that the airborne troops got. Over here is one of our favorites. I nominated him for the French Legion of Honor when we went back to France 5 years ago. It was presented in the town of St. Miraglise that he liberated by the President of France, and then he was up on the stage with President Obama and the other heads of England, France, Great Britain, and the U.S. I think that's enough. Steve? A round of applause, please, for our two partners. And now I'd like to present the chancellor.
It's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Ballentine. I've known her for several years. She's nationally recognized as a leading expert in today's topic, which is palliative care. She's a director of the senior lobby, and we feel very fortunate. I consider it a tribute to our organization's growing influence and reputation that a person such as Jennifer participates. On a personal note, she edits our monthly newsletter. Almost certainly is now the most grammatically and error-free newsletter we've ever published. My wife is very appreciative. She's currently the executive director of Life Quality Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to education of healthcare professionals and the public in palliative care and related topics. She's presented hundreds of programs to the public and professionals locally and national conferences on hospice and palliative care, advanced care planning, caregiving, healthcare, public policy, healthcare ethics, palliative sedation, multicultural and multi-spiritual issues, and the end of life and other topics. So if you'd all welcome Jennifer, she'll proceed with the program.
Anybody lose a silver earring? Going once, silver earring. Yours?
I always cringe very slightly at that introduction because the one thing I can't do is carry a tune. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by imagery and folklore and icons and symbols and all of the sort of narrative versions of that, folk tales and legends and etc. and in particular flowers, because flowers are a wonderful shorthand. They actually send messages. And if you know what the message is, you can say all kinds of things in a bouquet. They're beautiful, of course, but they also speak. Red roses, of course, say, I love you. But did you know that yellow roses say, I'm sorry? Or that zinnias say, I'm thinking of you. Sweet peas say, thank you for a lovely time. And snapdragons say, you are lying to me. So just remember that next time someone sends you some snapdragons. But today, we're going to be hearing from the iris. And the iris is the messenger of messengers. The iris says, I have a message for you. And indeed, it is a significant message. It's a message about life and about the end of life. And the messages that you have for your family and loved ones about how you want to live, how you want to die, and what at that ultimate moment is really most important to you. It's about choices and essential conversations and about a new approach to care to ensure your living up to your dying can be the best it can possibly be. Iris is, I like to say rather than was, a Greek goddess. She was the sister of the infamous Harpies. She is the messenger of Zeus and of Hera. She can appear to gods or mortals, but rarely in her divine form. Typically, she appears as someone close to you or familiar and trusted. And her message, like so many, is mixed. There's good news and there's bad news. And here's the bad news. She cuts the thread that binds our souls to our bodies. And it seems her shears have gotten a little bit dull over the last 100 years or so. We used to die quickly. 100 years ago, the primary causes of death were childbirth, for many women and children, accidents, and infectious diseases. The average age at death was, wait for it, 46. Now I say average age at death, which doesn't mean that the minute you turned 46 you keeled over, which was a great comfort to me when I first found this out because I had just turned 46. What this means is that the rate of child mortality was so high that it brought down the overall average. In our cities in America, in 1900, only 1 in 3 children lived past the age of 5. Some of you, I don't think any of you actually will remember the 1918 flu pandemic, but you may remember people who remember. That killed 500 million people worldwide. That's roughly, it infected 500 million people and killed 100 million, which is roughly a third of the current population of the United States. So if you can imagine 1 in 3 people vanishing from the US, that was the mortality rate from the flu pandemic. Medicine, a while back, had very little to offer. In this painting from the 19th century called The Country Doctor, the doctor is there. He turned up, which was pretty important, more than some of our doctors do today, no offense. But that was about all he could do. He's not doing a whole heck of a lot in this painting, is he? He's sitting, he's looking, he's listening. But where are his instruments? Where are his machines? Where are his medicines? Nowhere to be seen. About all he could offer is his compassionate presence, which is not much to sneeze at, exactly. But as the 20th century proceeded, we began to have the gleaming halls of medicine, the fabulous hospital wards, offering healing and hope and cure. Wards became increasingly high-tech. And maybe a little sterile. For perhaps this is the future of our hospital wards. Not sure that looks any more comfortable. Interestingly, in the middle of the 20th century, in the 1950s, Talcott Parsons, who's a sociologist, observed that most of our life's rituals are now presided over by medicine, not religion so much. When we're born, what's the first thing that happens? Yeah. And we're loaded up as infants with vaccinations, right? Before we go to school, we have to present the vaccination certificate to say that we are safe. When we go off to camp, we have to have a physical examination. When we get married, in some states, we still have to have blood tests. And so on. As we go through our lives, our rituals have been taken over by medical events. And indeed, our places of worship are now perhaps hospitals. We used to build cathedrals. Now we build fabulous edifices of healing. Do you remember when this was the breakthrough modern architectural marvel of modern medicine? St. Joseph's Hospital right up the road. I was born right up there, about on the 5th floor, I think. And now we have these gleaming architectural marvels of healing and hope. Our machines got much more elaborate through time. We found effective, if not always pleasant, ways to solve previously fatal disease, and eventually vaccinations to eradicate them. This was a ritual certainly of my childhood. I don't know about the rest of you. Absolutely. Remember this? So, what became kind of an uncomfortable, unusual event, and I warned this is the same gentleman, now is an annual event, right? We go and we get our flu shots, or we get pneumonia shots, or we get whatever it is, and we take it kind of for granted. That it's all going to be fine. Surgery, antibiotics, anesthesia have given us incredible outcomes, evolving from its battlefield brutality and desperate measure to a reliable and sometimes still very risky solution to myriad problems. And it's getting pretty high-tech now, too. Sometimes surgeons don't even get near the patient anymore. Chemotherapy, I'm hoping, and in about 10 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say, wow, that was really barbaric, what we used to do.
Yeah.
But it has turned cancer from an always fatal disease into a manageable chronic condition for many, many people for many, many years. I'm kind of hoping this is the future of chemotherapy. What do you think? Yeah! But the result of all of this is that we're dying slower of diseases that are no longer swiftly fatal, but they're chronic and progressive. They chip away at us until we're kind of in this situation now. For those of you who can't see this, you've got 6 months, but with aggressive treatment, we can help make that seem a lot longer. This is not the way it should be. This is the dark side of the wonderful advances of modern medicine. The cure can be worse than the disease. We're living longer, but not always better. And tragically, for too many, we are simply prolonging death. We are dying harder. This is not how I want to go out. And yet 15% of us still will go out through the ICU. 80% of us will die in some kind of healthcare facility or institution. And 90% of us want to be at home. What is wrong with this picture? So much. So that's the bad news that Iris brings us. But the other thing about Iris is that her name means rainbow, which is a symbol, after all, of hope and redemption, new beginnings, promises kept. So here's the good news that Iris has for us today. There's a new approach to care called palliative care. How many of you have heard of it? Great. That's pretty good. Palliative care is specialized medical care for people with serious illness. It focuses on providing patients with relief from symptoms, from the pain, and the stress. And there's a lot of stress in serious illness, or chronic illness, or even terminal illness. The goal is to improve quality of life for the patient and for the family. It's provided by a team of physicians, nurses, and other specialists who work with your current physicians and nurses and other specialists to provide an extra layer of support. It's appropriate at any age, at any stage of a serious illness. It does not require a terminal diagnosis, does not require a prognosis of only 6 months or less. It can be provided along with curative care. So instead of the old model where you're diagnosed with a serious condition and all of the effort and all of the time and all of the money and all of the resources are spent toward cure, and yes, many people are cured and that's fabulous. But for some conditions and for some people, we run out of cure. The methods are no longer effective. The disease gets ahead of the cure. And then all of a sudden, there comes that awful moment when, bang, I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do. And you're shifted quite abruptly into comfort care, or into hospice if you're lucky. But it's an abrupt shift, and it can feel like an abandonment. And it happens way, way, way too late. Instead of that, palliative care proposes an integrated model where at that diagnosis, as soon as we start in with the curative care, we also start in with the palliative care. And while you're getting all of that aggressive chemotherapy and radiation and surgery and all of the rest of it, which you hope will be effective, and maybe it will be, someone's also paying attention to the fact that you feel crummy. And your family is stressed. And you can't get out of bed in the morning. And your dog needs walking. And you don't know who you are anymore because you can't work. All of those features are taken care of by someone who is paying attention to the palliative aspects of your concerns while the cure continues. And if the cure starts to run out, if the disease starts to get ahead of things, the palliative emphasis simply increases until we get out to perhaps a time when only comfort care is needed or wanted, in which case it's a smooth transition into hospice perhaps, or you just continue with palliative. It's a better picture. So just to be clear on this, palliative care and hospice care are related but not identical. As we like to say, all hospice is palliative care, but not all palliative care is hospice. Hospice is a specialty level of palliative care that is a fully covered Medicare benefit, by the way. Medicare has some requirements around hospice. You have to give up any curative care to enter hospice, and you have to have a prognosis of 6 months or less. But it is fully paid for, and it is fully robust. Most hospice patients are cared for at home, where they want to be, or in nursing facilities, assisted living, or in special inpatient facilities that are designed solely for hospice care. But palliative care precedes hospice. Palliative care, unfortunately, is not a Medicare benefit, and as a result of that, many services are paid for out of donation dollars, grants, or out of the excess funds of the organization offering it. So it is not as fully developed as hospice and not as widely available. But we're hoping that might change. Palliative care pays attention to suffering and concerns in many different domains. First and foremost, palliative care asks, what do you want? What is important to you now? What are your goals for care? Curative care asks, what are the aims of treatment? So for instance, if you have advanced cancer, curative care might ask, might talk about the aims of treatment as being, we need to beat back this cancer some more. We need to control it some more. And in order to do that, we need you to be in the hospital, in ICU, in isolation for that 15th round of chemotherapy. That's the aim of treatment. But your goal might be, never mind that, I want to get strong enough to go home and play with my grandchildren. That's what palliative care asks about. What is your goal? And then we try to match the treatment to the goal, whatever that is. We talk about advanced care planning. We think ahead. What do you want ahead of time? We ask about psychosocial and spiritual support. How is it with your soul? How is it with yourself and your relationships and your families? We try to coordinate the care a little bit better so we're not, in 10 different silos and 10 different specialists, none of them talking to each other. And we help with difficult decisions, as well as aggressively treating pain and symptoms. This is the picture of hospice and palliative care. This is Florence. Real person, real patient, was in hospice care for 6 years. God bless her. Almost doesn't happen anymore. The median length of stay in hospice is less than 3 weeks. But the reason Florence was in hospice so long was because she was really clear about what she wanted. She did not want to leave her mountain cabin, where she had had her children and raised her children, where she had been born. And here she is tucked up in her bed with her favorite quilts and her Afghan and her kids' artwork on the wall and a dream catcher in the window. And what you can't see out that window is a beautiful bird feeder that is attracting all kinds of gorgeous mountain birds. Florence is where she wants to be. So how do you get here instead of here? What that requires is a lot of talk. It requires you to speak up about what you want, and loudly and often, so that the people around you will hear it. Family, friends, neighbors, relations, providers. Anyone who will listen to you, you need to tell them what you want. It requires conversation. And here are some questions to get that conversation going. These are the essential conversations and the messages that Iris brings to you today. What is most important to you? I had this conversation with my 18-year-old. And after a lot of discussion, what he laid down for me was that his brain is more important to him than his body. He's willing to put up with a lot more disability in his body than he is in his brain. That helps me. God forbid I should ever have to make decisions for him, but now I know what's important to him. What's important to you? Maybe it's communication. Maybe it's mobility. Maybe it's recognizing your family members, whether you can talk to them or not. What is most important to you? Who will speak for you when you can't? And trust me, there will be a time when you can't. Someone will have to make decisions for you if you can't make decisions for yourself. Who is that going to be? Who do you trust to do that? And don't assume they know for a second what you do want. Studies have taken spouses of 60 years and put them in 2 different rooms and asked, Lola, what would George want? George, what would Lola want? They're wrong. Most of the time. Not always. But don't assume that your family knows if you don't tell them. And be sure you pick somebody who knows how to make a decision. Have you been shopping with people who don't know how to make a decision? It's horrible. want that person standing up in the ICU speaking for you? How much do you want to know? Do you want all of the gritty details that the doctors might want to lay on you, or do you want somebody else to be handling all of that? That's an important question. Who do you want to have around you? More to the point, who do you not want to have around you? That's important to know. Where do you want to be? Most of us want to be at home, but not everyone. What do you mean by quality of life? What does that look like to you? Everybody's got a different definition, and don't let anybody impose their definition of quality of life on you. But if you don't want that to happen, you need to define it for yourself and tell somebody. And how do you want your death to be? There's a new initiative out called the Conversation Project, which asks this question. There's a website you can go to, theconversationproject.org, and you can type in a description of how you want your death to be. Many, many, many people have done this, and they've now developed what's called a wordle. You know what a wordle is? It's a graphic depiction of the frequency of certain phrases and words. So in this depiction, the more frequent words are larger and more prominent, and the less frequent words are smaller. So taking the responses of 50,000 some people to this question of how do you want your death to be, the Conversation Project Wordle looks like this. So people mostly want their death to be what? Peaceful. I don't see in the ICU up there anywhere, do you? I don't see alone anywhere up there. I suspect this is pretty much what you might want. But no one will assume and no one will know if you don't tell them. So the Conversation Project has on its website a starter kit that helps you ask some of these questions and answer them with your family members, with your neighbors, with your providers. I encourage you to visit the website, to download the starter kit. And if you're not web savvy, just give me a ring and I'll help you. So in closing, here's what I want you to do for just a second, and I say this understanding the risk, but close your eyes. And imagine your bliss. And what I mean by that is the place, or the activity, or the person, or the time that brings you the most joy. Just pure joy. Just imagine your bliss for a minute. Everybody got a picture? All right, open your eyes. Maybe your bliss is climbing mountains. Not mine. Maybe it's having a cup of tea. Maybe it looks like this, which is my kid's room. That's his bliss. This is my bliss. Whatever your bliss is, I'm guessing it's not this. Talking, having these essential conversations is the difference between Florence and this. Not everyone gets the death they plan, but you have a lot more control over it and a lot more influence over it than you think you have. But it begins with a conversation, and it ends with thinking about where you want to be and putting plans in place to get there. And hospice and palliative care are your best bets for a peaceful death and a quiet life. Thank you very much. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for your attention, and have a great rest of the day.
Do we have any legislators there?
Irene, Aquilar.
Would you like to say something? One of my very favorite.
Hello, how are you? Good afternoon, seniors. Hi. Thank you so much for coming down here and for your activism. Oh, did you guys know you have a star in your midst? Yes. Stand up. We have former Senator Evie Hudak. What I want to tell you is that we are all thinking about seniors, and actually we are all hoping that we'll live long enough to be seniors. I think I'm old enough for an AARP card, but I don't count that being a senior quite yet. But one of the big efforts going on in this state is something called the Community Living Advisory Group, and I'm privileged to be a part of that. And what we're trying to look at is what do we need to do to help you stay in your home for as long as you can, because that's where most people want to be. And so if any issues related to seniors arise, you have a lot of champions in the Senate, but as the chair of the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services, I'd encourage you also to reach out to me. I thank you for your advocacy, for your activism, and for your dedication to improving the lives of all people in Colorado. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Any other legislators? I did want to say membership. Anyone can access our membership if they go onto the webpage. And frankly, we want you to join because you believe in us. All the information we provide is done at no charge, so you don't need to join to get access to our newsletter or anything else. So